We are recording. All right, like I said, chapter 4, configuring group policies is what we're doing tonight. Okay. So group policy objects, they can be really complicated, but they're also super useful. So this is one of those ones that you can take little snippets from the slides and things like that. And you will probably, if you're doing anything with them, you'll probably use them from years to go. Group policy architecture and function involve the following components: GPOs, which is an object containing policy settings that affect user and computer operation environments and security, can be local or they can be Active Directory objects. Replication, which ensures that all domain controllers have a current copy of each GPO. Creating and linking. GPOs are created in the group policy management console and can be linked to one or more Active Directory containers. Scope and inheritance. The scope of a group policy defines which users and computers are affected by its settings. So that's the nice thing. You can create multiple GPOs that only affect certain users, certain groups, certain computers. It's fantastic. Local and domain group policy objects. A GPO contains policy settings for managing many aspects of domain controllers, member servers, member computers, and users. There are two main types of GPOs: local GPOs and domain GPOs. So first, we're going to start off with local GPOs. Local GPOs are stored on local computers, which is why they're called local GPOs, and edited via the group policy object editor snap-in. Settings in local GPOs that are inherited from domain GPOs can't be changed on the local computer. Only settings that are undefined or not configured by domain GPOs can be edited locally. When you run gpedit, you can open a local GPO named local computer policy containing computer configuration and user configuration nodes. Did someone have a question? Sorry, I just thought I heard someone's speaker pop on. So here is what your local group policy editor looks like. And as you can see, computer users are nice and split out there. Local GPOs that allow different policy settings depend on who logs onto the computer. There's the local admin GPOs, local non-admin GPOs, and then user-specific GPOs. To access these GPOs, add the group policy object editor snap-in to an MMC, browse to open the dialog box, click User tab, and select one of your GPOs. Oh, no, it's no problem. Whenever I hear the mic come on, I want to make sure I'm not talking over someone who needs to ask a question. All right, so here's your browse for a group policy object that you can see. Domain GPOs. Okay, domain GPOs are stored in Active Directory or on a domain controller. Consists of two separate parts: a group policy template and a group policy container. GPT and GPC have the following common traits: naming structure and folder structure. Knowing GPO structure is important for resolving issues. Group policy templates. A group policy template contains all the policy settings that make up a GPO, as well as its related files, such as scripts, and is contained in the sysball share on a domain controller. Upon creation of a GPO, several files and subfolders are created. The exact number may vary, but each GPT folder will contain at least these three items: your GPT, INI, machine, and user. And you can see these down here. A group policy container is stored in the system policies folder. Stores GPO policies and status information, but no policy settings. Similar to GPT in that it uses a GPO's GUID, is that enough G words for you, for a folder name. Information contained in a GPC, name of the GPO, file path to a GPT, version, and status. So you can see here's your attribute editor, display name, there's different flags, and there's your path that you can see down there as well. Group policy replication. GPCs are replicated with Active Directory. GPTs located in the sysvol share are replicated by one of the following methods. File replication service, used when running in a mixed environment of differing Windows Server operating systems. Distributed file system replication, or DFSR, used when all DCs are running Windows Server 2008. DFSR is more efficient and reliable. GPC and GPT can become out of sync. To gather information, open Group Policy Management Console and click the domain node in the left pane and the status tab in the right pane. Click Detect Now. So here's what they're talking about. You can see the middle part here. There's the 0 domain controllers, replication and sync. And you can see that there's a question mark on whether or not they're have replication in progress. I know it's like everything starts with G and it's like G to G, G to G, G. After a while, it just kind of hurts your brain. And that's why you have all of this written down somewhere else. Creating and linking GPOs. Just remember GPO and then look everything up for a GPO. That's what I usually do. Primary tools for managing, creating, and editing GPOs are Group Policy Management. And see, this is the problem. Group Policy Management Console and Group Policy Management Editor. If editing a GPO is already linked to a container, changes in policy settings take effect as soon as clients download them. There's no save option in the GPME. Changes are saved immediately. Before introducing multiple policy changes at once, test them individually. So that's kind of like the same thing you would do if you're doing major software changes. It's better to test things out rather than dumping a whole bunch of them at once, because if you break stuff and you have like 7 of them that are in there, you have to go back and test all 7 of them rather than knowing which one is the problem right there. Editing an existing GPO. To edit, right-click the GPO in GPMC and click Edit, which will open the GPO in GME. GP. Gee, could this get any more complicated? It is possible to make changes to the default domain policy, but it's not advisable. Recommended method for making changes to domain policies is creating a new GPO and linking it to the domain. GPOs are applied to objects in reverse of the specified link order. So here's what your Group Policy Management Console looks like. And as you can see, everything is nice and in your different folders. And then you have your different, like here's your password policy, user account policy. It's good to separate them out so that you can, if something goes bad, you don't have, one thing that I've seen people try to do, and this is really a bad idea, is try to make an overarching policy that does multiple things. Well, if you do that, then you're like, okay, now I have to sift through this massive policy and I don't know which chunk of it I have to troubleshoot. Whereas if you do things like this and you split them out, you can go, okay, this piece, there's something wrong with user accounts. Okay, I'll go look at the user account policy rather than looking at group policy 1, group policy 2, group. And I've actually seen this set up that way. It's kind of horrifying. So it's better to use descriptive names that actually mean what they're doing. And it's better to make small policies that work faster rather than massive policies that just sit there and chug along that you have to dig through to troubleshoot. So here's an example here. And you can see that you can move things up and down as well. Creating a new GPO. There are 2 ways to create a new GPO in the GPMC. Right-click the container you're linking. I can't speak because of all those G names. Right-click the container you're linking the GPO to and select Create a GPO in this domain and link it here. Right-click the Group Policy Object folder and click New. Now, what I usually do is the bottom one, just because that's how I was originally taught. There's no wrong way on that one. It's just whichever one you're more comfortable with. Best practice is to create GPOs that focus on a category of settings, then name the GPO accordingly. See? Using starter GPOs. A starter GPO is a template for creating GPOs, not a GPT. New GPO wizard includes an option to use starter GPO. Stored in the starter GPOs folder is a GPMC. To use a starter GPO, whoever developed these really should be smacked for all these G acronyms. Select one in the source starter GPO list box, new GPO wizard, right-click the starter GPO in the starter GPO folder, click new GPO from starter GPO. To create a starter GPO, right-click the starter GPO folder and click new. Then watch C3PO smack you. Okay. Dear God, please make it stop. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. Okay, so graphically, this is where you see that there's your starter GPO folder. So yeah, you're probably right on that. Group policy settings. Settings and computer configuration take precedence over settings and user configuration should there be a conflict. So remember, computer over user. 3 folders under policies folder are software settings, Windows settings, and administrative templates. Policy settings can be managed or unmanaged. Managed policies reset to not configures when the object falls outside of the policy scope. Unmanaged policies are persistent. Okay, next we're on to software installation policies. Contains the software installation extension, which can be configured to install software packages remotely. Applications are deployed with Windows Installer Service, which uses Microsoft Software Installer or MSI files. An MSI file is a collection of files packaged into a single file with an MSI extension. Contains the instructions Windows installer needs to install the application correctly. Oh, shoot. Sorry about that. Configuring software installation for computers. In the computer configuration node, software packages are assigned to target computers. Assigned packages are installed the next time the computer starts. And that's something to note. I'm sure you guys have caught this already, but when you start your computer, these GPOs that's when they start to apply. So that's why when you do the force, when you do the GPO update force, it restarts your computer, because then when it restarts, it starts to apply all the new stuff that it might pick up. To assign a software package to a computer, create a shared folder on a server that gives the computer the read and execute permission. If you're deploying several applications through group policy, you can create a separate folder in the share for each package. When I go into the next one, I'll tell you that. Here's your deploy software. Select deployment method, assigned, advanced, and then you can fix it there. Now, I will tell you, a lot of times when I've seen this, they not only do they do like assigned folders, but a lot of times they will do their own virtual servers that are dedicated just to these software deployments to break it out and make it a little bit easier. Advanced application deployment options. To access other deployment options, open the properties dialog box for a package you've already added to the software installation node. The properties dialog box has several tabs with options for changing how the application is deployed. After a package is deployed to a computer, by default, it's not installed again. And that is just to save it from trying to do it every single time the computer, restarts. You can redeploy the application from the software and its software extension. So here's your your deployment screen, and then there's a check. Use this application, uninstall this application when it falls out of the scope of management, and that'll uninstall it when you run that one. Configuring software installations for users. The software installation extension performs the same function in the user configuration node. A software package can only be assigned to a computer, but there are 2 options for deploying software to users: published Is it installed automatically? A link to install the application is available in Control Panel's program and features, or assigned, which can be installed automatically when the user logs on to a computer in the domain. Ooh, that doesn't sound fun. No problem, Gustavo. Deploying scripts. A script is a series of commands saved in a text file to be repeated easily at any time. You can create command scripts, which is a series of commands saved in a file with a BAT extension, also known as a batch file. In the computer configuration node, you can configure startup shutdown scripts. In the user configuration mode, you can do log on, log off scripts. So here's an example of there's a batch file, and you can see it's on that server there. So you can see it's been added. And as you can also see, there's also a tab for PowerShell scripts. By default, Windows looks in the sysvol share on the DC in the folder containing the GPO where you're creating a script. The advantage of using the sysvol share, scripts are replicated automatically and can be retrieved by clients from a DC in the domain. If you want to store the scripts in the sysvol folder with your GPO, you need the GUID of the GPO to locate the correct folder. Folder redirection. Folder redirection enables an administrator to set policies that redirect folders in a user's profile directory. This is actually really cool. So I'm going to tell you how I've seen this used, and you guys may have run into this too. So one of the ways that I've seen this used is, for example, the documents and user profiles being stored on a network share, so that whenever someone saves to their main documents folders and their profile stuff, instead of being saved locally, it's redirected and it's saved on and backed up in a server. So for example, when I was at the school district, we did that, and we also used shadow copy and some other things for backup. So we told people, don't save them here, save them here. Because then if something happens, we can always roll it back if you get an infection on your computer, and this, files saved in these locations are savable. And, if we have to nuke your computer, you'll only lose, because we did shadow copy every 12 hours, you'll only lose maybe 12 hours at the most. So I've seen that happen in quite a bit of places where they redirect the user files to a network share, and it's actually a really cool idea, and I highly suggest that, especially if you're doing a lot of backups and you want to have your users have something that's just kind of an automatic safety net for them. So it redirects. Folder redirection applies strictly to user accounts and is found only under the user configuration node. There are 13 folders you can redirect. To redirect a folder, right-click in the folder redirection node and click Properties. So you can see here. So we didn't do the start menu, but we did all the, the documents, pictures, stuff like that. There were some that we just chose to leave local because we didn't want the downloads one. We left that local because we figured that would crud up the server, because people download stuff all the time. But we did leave the documents and pictures backed up, and it really helped when we had to troubleshoot stuff. So, and there is an example right here, and then you can see the server path, the root path down there. Security settings. There are over 100 policies under security settings. Some of the most important are under account policies and local policies. Many of the important policies are covered in the following sections. Local policies, audit policy, which applies to what users can and can't do on the local computer to which they log on. Administrators can audit events such as login and log off, file and folder access, Active Directory access, and system and process events. Can be enabled for successful events, failed events, or both. Creates a lot of system overhead, so it should be used sparingly. Events created by auditing are listed in a security log, and you can view those in the event viewer. So here's your example there. There are, let's see, auditing object access. There are 2 steps for auditing objects. Enable the audit objects assets policy for success, failure, or both. Enable auditing on target objects for success, failure, or both. After object access is enabled in group policy, you need to enable auditing on the target object. Do this by changing the system access system access control list for the object in the auditing tab of the advanced security settings dialog box for the object. And as you can see, there's our nice fun here, and there's your auditing tab that they're doing there. And you can see you have type, principal, access, inherited from, and applies to as well. Changing default auditing, Windows Server logs, successful logon events, and certain other events. By default, you must use the auditpoll.exe command line tool to have more control over the types of events that are audited. To clear the audit policy subcategories so that auditing is controlled only by the group policy, type audit poll for audit policy --clear. Local policy, user rights assignment. User rights define the actions users can take on a computer. More than 40 user right policies can be assigned. Default domain controllers policy specifies user right assignment policies that define actions user can take on domain controllers. Local policy security options. This subnode includes almost 100 settings. The category of security policies to configure right away is user account control policies. Determine what happens on a computer when a user attempts to perform an action that requires elevation. This is something to remember because this is those, remember how we talk about pivoting to a system and then elevating rights to get into things. So if you don't do this correctly, this is how they do get in and do that. Elevation is a process that occurs when a user attempts to perform an action requiring administrative rights and is prompted to enter credentials. Additional settings commonly configured: accounts, administrator account status, guest account status, limited local account, use of blank passwords to console login only, rename administrator account, rename guest account, interactive logon, do not display last username, do not require Control-Alt-Delete, and Microsoft Network Server, disconnect clients when logon hours expire. And here's just your big old window of what those security option account policies look like. Restricted groups. Restricted groups policy allows an administrator to control the membership of both domain groups and local groups on member computers. This node is empty by default, and you configure it by adding groups you want to restrict. The member's property controls which accounts can be members of the group. The member of property adds the target group to groups on the list that isn't already a member of. So you can see here, configure membership for, and it shows here what that looks like. File system. The file system node enables an administrator to configure permissions and auditing on files and folders on any computers in the GPO on which the policy is configured. You need to add a folder or file and then configure the settings. Once you're done configuring, the file system settings are transmitted to the file system of the target computers. Working with administrative templates. Administrative template files. XML formatted text files then define policies in the administrative template folder in a GPO. Topics related to the administrative templates: computer configuration settings, user configuration settings, the ADMX central store, administrative template property filter, custom administrative templates, migrating administrative template files. Computer configuration settings. Browse group policy management editors so you are familiar with where to look when you need to configure a particular type of policy setting. To see an explanation of a setting, double-click it and read the help section of the dialog box for the policy setting. So here's your example of what that looks like. set user home folder, and you can see all these here and there. You can put it on the network and map it to a drive letter. And here's that window there. User configuration settings. Administrative templates and user configuration node contain the same folders as the computer configuration node, but with different settings because they apply to users. Dirt. Policies in this node add the following subfolders to previous list for the configuration node. Desktop, which controls the look of the user desktop and can limit action users can take on the desktop. Shared folder controls whether a user can publish shared folders and distributed file system root folders in Active Directory. ADMX Central Store. Administrative templates are collections of policy definition files in XML format, referred to as ADMX files, because of their ADMX extension. They specify registry entries that should be controlled and the type of data the entries take. ADMX Central Store is a centralized location for maintaining ADMX files. To create a central store, create a folder named policy definitions in the, you can see here, system root, and then that nice long folder there. Then create a language specific folder that uses the 2-character ISO standard for languages. Lastly, copy ADMX files in the storage location. Like I said, I don't expect you to know this off the top of your head. Just remember that you can look it up. Working with filters. When searching for a particular policy to configure, you can narrow the search by using a filter in the Group Policy Management Editor. And this works really well if you have a ton of them you have to go through. Open the GPO in the GPME and click Policies, Administrative Templates under the Computer Configuration or User Configuration. Click Action Filter Options from the menu to open the Filter Options dialog box, and you can configure a filter with the following criteria: managed configures, commented, enable keyword filters, enable requirements filters. After you've configured the filter options, you apply the filter by clicking Action Filter On from the menu or clicking the filter toolbar icon. So here is the nice massive screen in case you have to go through and look through a pile of filters. And I have to tell you, the more you use this, the more familiar it becomes. But if you're searching through like hundreds of these, which can happen in large organizations, this can be really helpful. Using custom administrative templates. Many software vendors provide administrative template files for controlling their application settings through group policies. Windows version before Vista and Server 2008 used ADM files. This format can still be used on the same system as ADMX files. ADMX files can also have an ADML extension, which provides a language-specific user interface in the Group Policy Management Editor. Adding a custom administrative template to group policy. If you create your own ADMX file, you can simply add the ADMX file to that nice root path up there. Any language-specific files, ADML, should be placed in the corresponding language folder. If you have created a central store for policy definition files, place your custom ADMX files in this location so they are replicated to all domain controllers. The central store is a folder named Policy Definitions on the sysvol share of a DC. Working with older administrative templates. If you're using older ADM templates, add them manually by following these steps. In the GPMC, open a GPO in the GPME. Right-click the Administrative Templates folder under Computer Configuration or User Configuration and click Add Remove Templates. In the Add Remove Templates dialog box, click Add. In the Policy Templates File Explorer window, find and select the ADM file and click Add. It's basically just going like File Open, Add. It's not as hard as it sounds. In the Add Remove Template dialog box, click Close. Migrating administrative templates. If you're running Windows Server 2008 or later domain, but still have to support clients older than Vista, you might want to migrate the older ADM files to ADMX format so that you can make use of Central Store. The Central Store can't work with ADM files, so you need to convert the ADM files to ADMX with ADMX Migrator. It's a snap-in tool, and it's available free from Microsoft Download Center. To use, they've got an option in the book that you can go look up on how to use that. Working with security templates. Security templates are text files with a .inf extension that contain information to define policy settings in the computer configuration policies, Windows settings, security settings node. They can be used to create and deploy security settings to a local or a domain GPO. Verify current security settings on a computer against the settings in a template. Tools for working with security templates, security template snap-in, and security configuration and analysis snap-in. The security template snap-in can be used to create security templates for use with computers that require different security settings, such as servers with different roles installed or different physical locations. When a user creates a template, it's stored under the user's documents folder in security templates. After the template is created, it can be imported into a local or domain GPO or be used by the security configuration and analysis snap-in. Create a security template in one of two ways. Use the existing security settings on a computer, create a security template from scratch. And here you can see that snap-in. Security configuration and analysis snap-in. This is useful for checking a computer's existing security settings against the known settings in a security template file. Can also apply a security template to a computer. Analyzing current security settings against a template creates a report for each policy setting. There are 5 possible results. An X in a red circle indicates a mismatch. A check mark in green indicates a match. A question mark in a white circle indicates the policy wasn't defined or the user doesn't have permission to access the policy. An exclamation point in a white circle indicates the policy doesn't exist on that computer, and no indicator indicates the policy wasn't defined in the template. Configuring group policy preferences. Group policy preferences enable administrators to set up a baseline computing environment, yet still allow users to make changes to configured settings. Both the computer configuration and user configuration nodes have a preference folder with 2 subnodes, Windows settings and control panel settings. Computers need the group policy preferences client-side extensions, GPPCSE package installed to recognize and download settings in the preferences folder when processing group policies. So here's your group policy management full editor, and you can see Windows settings and control panel settings. The nice thing about these is they are very nicely separated out, so it's fairly easy to navigate. How group policy preferences are applied. Preferences are refreshed on the same schedule as policies by default. Computer configuration preferences are refreshed when the computer restarts and every 90 minutes. User configuration preferences are refreshed when the user logs on and then every 90 minutes. You can change this by setting preferences to be applied only once. With preferences, settings aren't restored by default, unlike managed policy settings where the original setting is restored when the policy is removed. Creating group policy preferences. There are no built-in preference settings as there are with policies. You must create each preference you want to deploy. The process of creating most preferences is similar. Follow the steps on page 187 in your book to create a folder preference under the user configuration node. Creating group policy preferences. Here's your new folder properties. Item level targeting enables you to target specific users or computers based on certain criteria. An example, you can specify only portable computers that are docked have a preference applied. Select item level targeting option in the command tab, or sorry, not command, common tab of the preferences property dialog box, then click the targeting button that defines criteria that a computer or user must meet before the preference is applied. Criteria can be combined with and/or operators. And here's what that looks like. So
We have Windows 10 edition, any, but you can change those on there as well. All righty. Are you live? Did you guys make it through? I tried to kind of power through because the GG was getting a little aggressive. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this.